Wait for it. Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans, a stabby cast coordinator, and one very vocal chief shenanigator geeking out over our science fiction passions.
Just keeping you on your toes.
Geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guest, Mr. Alexander R. Tim. You know what? I should have asked you how to pronounce your name before we started. I knew I should have, and I never remember. One day I will, but not today. How do we say your name, sir?
Tambascia.
Tambascia. Okay. I imagine when you were at boot camp, that was not you caught some heck for that one.
Oh, I went through my whole private career as Tam Bastard.
I believe it. I mean, you can imagine the jokes they make with Handley and the gesticulation that followed. So yep. you feel my pain. I knew you would get it. All right. Can you introduce yourself to people that might not know who you are?
Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm very honored to be here. For those who are watching the show, I am Lieutenant Colonel Alexander R Tambascia, retired. I am an Armor Cav officer with 28 years of service to our country. I got medically retired in 2020, and from that retirement, I ended up, by accident of events, becoming an author, which a military sci-fi author, which has actually created a good following.
It's a good way to vent your demons, so to speak.
Oh yeah.
The military side of things, was that something that you read before service or during the service, or did you gravitate towards it after to kind of fill the void that civilian life created by leaving the military?
Well, when I left the military, I'll make myself a little bit vulnerable and open myself to your fans. Is when I got medically retired, the VA basically gave me the 1-2 punch and said, "Hey, our lab results say that you're terminal, and you only, they're saying I have about 5-6, and that really, I was expecting that, and I actually bumped into John." I became a very good friend with him. He actually wrote me in his stories and stuff. And as he got to know me, he kept pushing me. You got to write your story, man. You've done so much. You have perspective. You got to write. I turned around and said, John, I really appreciate you doing this, but I'm not you. I'm not a writer. If I write an autobiography, it'll probably be the cure for insomnia. And Jonathan says to me, he goes, well, you know who Aldous Huxley is? I said, oh yeah, Brave New World. Everyone knows him. And he said, that was a science fiction that was his autobiography about his drug abuse, right? And I'm like, no, I didn't know that. And he goes, okay. He goes, if he can do it, why can't you do it? Which, how I became an author is through that vector, and it actually helped with my PTSD and everything. But I basically made the first 3 books an autobiography of my service time behind a sci-fi backdrop. So it's kind of like, that's how I kind of fell into the military sci-fi. In some ways it just helps me stay in touch with being back in uniform, because 28 years, I literally spent my whole adult life in uniform, because I enlisted when I was 17. So, spending that much time in uniform, and then having them just drop you like a baby into the deep end of the water, saying, go now.
I can relate to that. I actually started writing in the same manner. The VA did a writing is therapy class, and for some reason I thought sci-fi would be easier to use that same sort of transmogrification as you word of my experiences. Sci-fi would be cleaner than like writing fantasy, because that's a lot more visceral. Because at the time I'm thinking like space combat's going to be clean, right? And then the more you start actually researching the science, like that, not at all. It's going to be dirty and gross no matter where you are. But I grew up on sci-fi that was like super clean. Like you'd watch it on TV and everything was shiny and white and polished, and so you didn't understand that burns are still going to leave scorch marks and such. But
Yep.
it is therapeutic to vent your demons onto the written word, and then people pay you for it, which is even better.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been a sci-fi fan from when I was little, so I completely relate with you because you always scratch yourself on the head. You're like, wait a minute, didn't that guy just shoot him? Why is there's no scorch marks on his arm? You know, and you know, the back when you're Gen X like me, back when we were watching, you know, sci-fis back then, they never truly captured the whole explosive decompression thing very well.
No, because that's messy.
Oh yeah, very messy.
You know, the other thing they never get right, or very rarely get right, I think the Sharps rifle series did it well, and then sci-fi Stargate Universe did it. Yeah. But when you got people falling in combat, they just leave them with their stuff, and I'm like, no, he doesn't need that anymore. You take it, especially if you don't know where resupply is going to come from, like in Stargate Universe, or you know, with the Napoleonic Wars, like they didn't know when the supply train was going to come. He doesn't need those boots. Take them. Or right, loot the gear. And most people forget that when they write mill stuff. And I'm like, no. He would not leave that gear because if nothing else, you don't want the enemy to get it.
Right.
So if you're going to leave it, it's because you're booby trapping it. So it will kill them when they try to get it. But
oh yeah,
you're right. In the 80s and 90s, it didn't always show that level of visceral reality, I think. And then, you know, I grew up watching the Gulf War on TV, and everything was so quick and sanitized that the idea that war is a long slog is just not something that was in the cultural zeitgeist anymore. And I think that carried over into what people were writing for the screen and for sci-fi in general.
Oh yeah.
So but of course I can't think of a single war that didn't start with "We'll be home by Christmas," or you know, before Christmas. I don't know what it's solstice, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, when I got sent over, it was the whole "you'll be home by Christmas." That's a short tour. 20 months later.
Yeah. All right. So before we get too deep into this, we do have to ask you the religion question. So are you ready for this, sir?
I'm ready.
All right. Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
Ooh, okay. Okay. Your Warhammer fans are going to call me a heretic here, but I'm a Babylon 5 guy.
Nice.
Well, I mean, Warhammer wasn't a choice either, so you know, I think they're going to be okay, since you know it's not out there. But Babylon 5 is a good one. Did you like Deep Space Nine then as well?
Actually, no. I really couldn't get into it. It's now this is where I really, you know, I'm a TNG. I'm the original guy, classic Star Trek, and I just liked how the writing and the stories were. Where, you know, Gene Roddenberry back in the 1960s, he very subtly wrote in his episodes, you know, big social economic messages without being so over the top overt about it. And when TNG came on DS9, it's like, dude, you're just trying to beat over my head a social view or a social economic view that you know, that I don't agree with. I mean, I understand that all art in some way, even us as authors, we express certain social economic views, but you know, when it starts overshadowing the universe, it really turned me off. And I really, it was really hard for me to really like the Star Trek. I think I did like the Archer one. I mean, that was one of the ones I liked, was Archer after the classic. But
when I look at, it was great.
And the cheese.
Well, the thing is about
people that like cheese.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, the thing about Star Trek is the original one is I think there was a very powerful episode where they had a race where black was on one side of the face and white on the other, and then it was switched on the other one. And it was so subtle in how he presented racial and segregation and things like that, where you could watch the story and just enjoy the story without even considering that factor. But when you dig into it, it's like, oh, wow, that was a powerful message. And I really think that when Roddenberry died and they made these new Star Trek spinoffs, that essence of, beat it over the viewer's head, make a subtle message, make them think about it versus this overt beating you over the head with a baseball bat of complaining about, everyday social. I mean, the latest flop with Paramount, was Starfleet Academy, which was, oh my God. And it didn't help anyone when Paramount says to all the Star Trek fans saying, well, you don't like Star Trek Academy, you were never a true Star Trek fan. And I'm going, I was watching Star Trek long before you were even born. So
yeah, some of us are that old. Thanks.
So basically, you are paraphrasing the advice Jim Butcher gives everybody when he teaches writing: don't preach harder than you entertain.
Yes.
And it's solid advice, because the old line is, if you wanted to be preached at, you go to church, you read to enjoy, to escape, to visit strange new worlds, and not be preached at in them.
No, well, yes, and even good church has the rule about, don't preach longer than the backside can take.
Yeah.
That is new to me, but I might steal that line.
Yeah, Strange New World. I have to admit, I do enjoy that series. That one really surprised me. I think Paramount did an amazing job on Strange New Worlds.
Okay. All right. So because we are polytheistic here at the Blasters and Blades podcast, Game of Thrones, Wheel of Time, or Chronicles of Narnia?
Wow. Well, since the only one out of the three I've ever seen was Wheel of Time, so I'll go with the Wheel of Time.
Solid reason to pick it. All right. And one of the crying shames of adulthood is we stop asking each other the important questions in life. And thanks to the generosity of our sponsors, we are bringing that back. And I'm going to ask you, sir, what's your favorite dinosaur?
Oh, clearly, no doubt, the king of all dinos, the T-Rex. What makes him so great is he brings small arms to a gunfight.
Yeah. I started to think, I haven't cemented it yet exactly. I want to do some more research because I think it could be fun, but you start to see what dinosaur people picked, and you can correlate it towards when they grew up and what dinosaur shows were on TV, like Land Before Time versus Land of the Lost and whatnot. Because the ones that grew up on Land Before Time, almost inevitably, one of their favorites is from that show. So it's
grew up with Land of the Lost, Slee Stacks,
Yeah. Did you watch that show, Jana? Land of the Lost?
Oh, yes. Yes, that was tremendously fun. It's very dated looking now. I tried showing it to my kiddo, and it was like, oh, this is so lame, Mom. It's like, you shut up, go away.
Yeah, I think. See, I watched a lot of the older stuff because back in the day, I used to have Nick at Night where they do all the reruns. And so I watched a lot of old shows that way when I was officially asleep, but not because I was watching TV. So that's one of those ones that I think the content was good, but the practical effects didn't age well. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how much of that's just because they were on a budget, so they probably didn't try that hard. I just don't know enough about the era that was originally filmed to compare it to see if that was good or bad by local comparison, as it were. So that's a good one, though. Did you ever watch, since you like dinosaurs, did you ever watch Terra Nova?
Yes. This is when you get me on science fiction and Fox, it's like every time they had an amazing show, they canceled it just when it was like the perfect cliffhanger, everything. It's like, they not only did they do that with Terra Nova, they did it with Above and Beyond, which to me, it still upsets me because they left it a cliffhanger. And I have, always supported any Kickstarter that says they want to carry it on. It's like, I want to see Above and Beyond actually come to a ending. So, Fox and sci-fi has never gone well. I mean, let's face it. They love canceling the shows that do the best. They canceled The Simpsons. They canceled Family Guy. They canceled Futurama, and all those shows seem to come back on other platforms.
Fox Entertainment is where good shows go to die.
Oh yeah,
or at least for a while.
At least for a while. The worst one is when they leave you on a cliffhanger. So They did that to Stargate Universe, and that bounced around various platforms. But I think Fox owned it for a little bit. And they're like, well, we know we left you on a cliffhanger, but buy the graphic novel and we'll give you an ending. So I spent $40 and bought it. So it delivered to me on launch day. I bought a physical copy because it was going to be my ending. I could pair it with the box set I bought of the DVDs. Yeah, that ended the graphic novel on a cliffhanger too.
Oh, rude.
Man.
Right. Like, it's just insult to injury. And like, it's one of those ones where, and I know younger people don't get what like life was like before streaming, where, you know, your chance was DVR it and you could record it, but it recorded it not by show, but by time slot. So if anything in front of it went long, like football on Fox, your show got booted and you might get 15 minutes of it. And so it distorted the Nielsen's tracking data. And so like, oh, nobody likes this. So they canceled it. And I'm like, no, you just are an idiot. Because they didn't know how to think, hey, this whole DVR thing exists. Wonder how that's going to affect tracking. And nobody ever asked at Fox Entertainment. Which is ironic because when they did a panel at one of the Comic-Cons where they interviewed someone that was with one of the other programs that was, you know, at the period that was like, I think it was ABC Entertainment was putting out like sitcoms. And like, yeah, we realized that we weren't getting full data because of the DVR. So we built in wiggle room if it was close. Fox, like, yeah, we DVR, what's that?
Oh God.
So,
you know, I'm going to date myself here. I remember a time when you buy time slot on a VHS and they didn't have the auto skip commercial.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
When you had to beat the commercial back, so it was a fight to the nearest bathroom if you had to go during a movie because you couldn't pause it, or if someone was in there getting snacks, you'd be like, "Commercial's over!" And you're hollering across the house, which always made the parents very happy when you're hollering across the house.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Well, that's
kids
what
today
the legend
don't
is.
understand. Go ahead.
Oh, the legend just is that for the MASH finale, that in New York and other large cities, they ended up with all sorts of plumbing problems because it was those commercials were the only times that everybody would run, hit the restroom, and come back. And so many people were watching it that it was all these toilets flushing at the same time.
I believe
it.
You
know, and this is what gets me. And I always laugh at this because but I work with millennials, and you know, and I like, you don't understand to go through when we were, you know, this whole idea, oh, I can pause it, go talk to my friends, go do something, come back, and what, that didn't exist when we were growing up. I mean, I always hate it when I work with millennials and they complain how slow the internet is. And I just want to smack them going, I grew up in a day where you had a banshee shrill every time you try to go on the internet, and it took all day to download one page.
Yeah, we had to sacrifice robots to get online.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So, all right. So we are civilized human beings here at the Blashes and Blades podcast. We are no longer knuckle dragging troglodytes. So we ask you, good sir, coffee or tea, and how do you take it?
Oh, well, I know any of my readers here, they're probably screaming it right now. It is coffee. Coffee, you know, he who controls the being controls the universe. Coffee, ultimate substance. And, you know, being military, we all know military, you know, we don't live on fuel, on food, kindness. We do our daily job by consuming hate and coffee. That's how we do our job.
Nicotine and spite will keep you up all night.
Exactly, that too.
All right. So we mentioned in the pre-show. We mentioned in the intro that you had served in the U.S. Army. Obviously, you talked about you retired as a cav officer. Do you feel like your time in the Army affects the way you tell stories now?
Yes, I think, and I've actually thought about this, and I talked to my wife and some of my closer friends, and I'm like, if I tried to write a book back when I was younger and dumber, I don't think it would be as well written as it is today. I really think that the experiences I have and just the, you know, I don't know if you were combat arms, but I was combat arms. So every time we went on a patrol, we did a mission, you had to actually come back and fill an after actions report, which was when you were out there. You know, I kind of got into that storytelling business over time, and I think that if I never served, I don't think I could ever be a writer. I don't think it would ever have happened. It's definitely a major influence on how I tell stories and gallows humor.
Gallows humor, definitely.
Yeah.
I was a grunt, so I'm resisting the urge to tell cab jokes. So I was in the infantry for 8.5 years. So the just in case you didn't read the side chat, if your bandwidth starts getting too bad, turn the camera off. It'll lower the bandwidth requirement, and it should stop some of the lag. Because I know not everybody has the like we talked about, the best internet everywhere all the time. But so yeah, I get definitely even if you're not combat arms, the after action report, and sometimes when you want to get a certain intent across, you have to get creative in the reporting. So that's the old joke you see floating around like Twitter. How would I explain this job if I was putting it on a resume? And you have to do that kind of stuff in actual like AARs when you write those down. So it does definitely get you creative. If for nothing else, you want to say this happened, but not get in trouble for it. So you could word it creatively, and sometimes it'll fly under the radar if you do it right. That's the sergeant.
Actually, the greatest thing I like about being from the military, when I do like job interviews, I just love when they say, "Well, what did you do in the military?" And I look at them, I say, "I killed people," and just to see the look on their face, it is classic. Because I was looking like, "What do you think I did?" It's like, the recruiting poster, join the Army, go to strange new places, meet new people, then kill them. I mean, that's pretty much how I got in the Army. Because of course I enlisted back in the Gulf War started. So, yeah,
well,
I always like
98, and CNN did a special that year that world peace might finally be attainable. The month I enlisted, jokes on them. We have not had world peace since then. But yeah, it's my favorite is the joke about the old, how many people did you kill in the war, Grandpa? And he tells them and then the son's like, "Hey, Dad, I thought you were a mechanic." And the answer is, "I didn't say I was a good mechanic." I've seen all of those jokes about from a lot of the aviation side, because I grew up an Army brat, I was a Navy brat, but my grandfathers both served in the Army. And they were ground pounders. And so I kind of never really looked into what the air war looked like in a world before we had aerial supremacy. And so I started watching, I think it's Masters of the Sky. Apple did the movie about the bombers. Masters of the Air. And then I watched that show and I'm like, okay, so maybe it's not, what my infantry brothers and sisters sisters now, but that wasn't a thing then. Maybe it wasn't so bougie. So I started doing some looking into what they went through. And then once you start doing that, your algorithm tweaks, and now all of the jokes about bad mechanics and death counts start popping up into the military feeds that I see. So it's you don't really appreciate sometimes what other people went through because it's so insular until you start actually reading some of the reports. Holy garbage, those Air Corps guys, they had a higher death count in some cases than if they had landed on Omaha.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's insane. So all right, so we talked about how your writing is affected by your time in the Army. Do you feel like you draw on people you served with, either explicitly or otherwise, when you write?
Well, my first 3 books, the trilogy, is 100%. Every character that's in my series was reflective of someone I served with or have been with. I might change their, I phonetically changed their name, but everyone's based off someone I served with or been deployed with. My fan base, the favorite character of my fan base is Gunny, the character Gunny, and people ask me, well, when you write Gunny, she seems so real. She seems like she has a personality. She's not just like another character. I'm like, because she isn't. I literally wrote the character based on the interactions I've had with her personality, and it's and there was times, especially book 2, I'd be writing about people I served with who weren't lucky enough to get back home, and I would literally sit at my terminal crying because I came back and they didn't. So it's even my new series I'm writing, which is same universe, just a different story arc, is still drawing on people I served with, just in different capacities.
No, I unmuted. We talked about this in the pre-show, but it's interesting because when you do your drop troops, and I've talked with Rick Partlow, who has his own orbital drop shock troops as well. Like when you guys are doing it, you're going back to hammer slammers and there's another Merc one where they land that are like, I'm drawing a blank on it now.
Undying Mercenaries.
Undying Mercenaries.
By B.V. Larson.
No, not him. This predates that. Like when you say like drop troopers, and Heinlein obviously, but when you say drop troopers, for me, I instantly go to Halo because that's where I discovered the concept. And so it is kind of cool when you start talking to people intergenerationally about this concept. Like you can almost discover, or you can almost find where they grew up by what their inspiration was, because certain ones were popular. But speaking of consuming the content, so we talked about your military service and how it affects the way you tell stories and who you put in them. Has it changed since you served in the military, how you engage with content as a consumer?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I tend to be with even with movies, anime, or even books, I tend to be very critical on anything that's the military. For example, I'm trying to remember, like The Expanse. That was a prime one. In The Expanse, I got turned off on it because they had a whole military fraction, but yet no one acted how real military would be. You'd see privates mouthing off the sergeant first classes, mouthing off to, senior leaders. And it's just the disrespect not always there. And, the scene, like an enlisted person goes, there's the list of people on a bridge and the captain comes in the bridge, in The Expanse, the Marine who was standing guard never said, attention on deck. Things like, people probably who are listening to saying, oh, I'm just being nitpicky or anything like that. But because I grew up I literally grew up in that environment for 28 years. I kind of feel that anyone who writes anything that's military, whether it's military soap opera or military sci-fi, you got to get some things right. And I have walked away from science fiction content that just didn't have it right. And I mean, I could literally, I can literally count, how many books I've walked away because you can read the author never served. The author his version of the military is what he watched from Hamburger Hill or Full Metal Jacket. It's in the writing, and I know Rick's a great guy, and I read his work and I really enjoy Rick. And, he writes it how it is. I mean, he's very good on that. And I hope someday that my writing will be as good as his on that factor.
Okay. Your turn, Jenna. You had some questions.
Well, okay. So my question goes back to it. It's actually part of this consumer question. So why science fiction? Was that something that you liked before? Because we talked about you got into the writing because you were looking for that and looking for kind of a setting to put it against. But why did you choose science fiction as that setting versus mysteries or thrillers or something else? Why speculative fiction? Did you love it before, or was it just a new thing?
I was always a science fiction fan. Being a Gen Xer, I never really liked American cartoons. I mean, I remember waking up and Saturday mornings watching Robotech. That was in the 80s, but in the 70s, I would race home after school to watch Force 5, Star Blazers. Yes, I know all you hardcore fans, it's called Space Battleship Yamato. Yes, we know, but in America, and I would race home to, and I loved science fiction. And, when I became a gamer, I, all the sci-fi games story, I was just a big sci-fi consumer. I was a sci-fi consumer. So when Jonathan convinced me to write a story, I kind of felt, okay, if you should at least have some understanding of it. And I don't understand a thriller. I don't understand horror. I don't read it. I don't write a horror story or a thriller or a police story. But I said, ooh, science, and I have a science, my degrees are science. So it's something I know both from a tech story, and it was very easy to take of today and get realistic sci-fi out of it. And that's one of the biggest things in my book is science fiction is very, very close to what we would have if, we didn't have money was an issue, politics was an issue. You just let science go. A lot of that technology would be available. And that does turn off some of the fans, because some people have made comments on my book saying there's not enough science fiction. It's the book without science fiction. And, because they want to see the Star Wars, Star Trek level of science fiction, where it's like, I kind of believe some of those shows are more fantasy than truly science fiction, where my book, everything is based off of science. Like I base the whole jump technology on the Alcubierre drive, which was written by Manuel Alcubierre, who's a Mexican physicist, and I think he was a very brilliant person. So I base my science and things like that. So that's kind of why I kind of got into the science fiction niche, and further deeper into that, I'm in the military sci-fi niche from my own personal experience. So I'm very small group writers.
Yeah, the problem with the Alcubierre drive is that it requires more energy than the sun would put out in its lifetime. But then they have modifications they've made to the formula that make it more practical. The holdup with most cool sci-fi tech is the battery storage, the ability to channel and harness that power, even if you could generate it. So it'll be interesting. But most of what people call science is just hand wavy. I'm like, invert the dilithium crystals and it's good, which is cool. I'm not dogging it, but I think sometimes people don't always know what they're asking for, and what they think it is real and what's real is not always the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, when I watch a science fiction show and you get to the point of, you have the magic IBM Pixie come and put pixie dust over it to make it work. That's where I have to draw the line. But in that same tone, the other side of the coin is nothing makes me feel better than when I see science fiction actually impact our society. If you look at Star Trek, the original Star Trek, things that were talked about then that people said is fantasy, not real. I mean, transparent aluminum. I remember when I was growing up, and all my physicists, there's no such thing as transparent aluminum. It doesn't exist. And I think it was like 5 years ago, a scientist actually made transparent aluminum. Tricorders are real now. We have real medical tricorders. A lot of the technology that they talk about, people like us who, when we were growing up, became scientists and engineers and made that technology real. So as much as I hate when the magic IBM Pixie has to come out to make things work, on the other side, I like when I do see those technologies become reality.
Yeah. I think the X Prize did a couple years ago where they charged people, that was the X Prize, to create the tricorder to judge medical. But it's just glorified WebMD. So I don't know that it got to that scale, but someone made it, and they made it handheld. So that was still a start. So I think a lot of what science fiction is guessing is possible is now starting to show up, which is kind of cool.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, let's look at something a little bit just out of our generation. The 1990s, the flip phone, the Motorola flip phone. The design of the Motorola flip phone was based on the classic Star Trek tricorder. I mean, a communicator design.
Communicator.
Yeah. So, and now today, Samsung has brought back the flip phone because there is such a rich following of that. And, and I think Samsung posted that on one of their blogs, how they found a correlation between people who like Star Trek who bought the Samsung Flip. So I think there is a following there.
Oh, my husband has the Star Trek communicator as a flip phone. And so it connects with his whole system, the whole 9 yards, and he flips it out, and it makes him ever so happy because it is the Star Trek communicator, but it is all connected to his phone, to his system. So he can sit there and talk on the communicator. It makes him just ever so happy.
Send me that link. I need to buy that.
I will find it from him.
So the other part of that is and I did that because I worked with HIPAA compliance stuff. The flip phone also, because it doesn't have all the whiz-bang tech, also meets the requirements for privacy issues. So like my stepdad worked in the shipyard. I worked in documentation that involved HIPAA documents. So the other part of that is because it's dumb, it isn't a security issue. So if you're a parent, you can take that into, otherwise places you couldn't take a regular phone and it'd be okay. So, but I still think it'd be cool if you could get one that would look like the Trek one.
It's very fun.
Does it make like sound effects to add cool factor?
Oh, yeah. It has all sorts of sound effects on it and little lights that light up. And if he's not paying attention and it's just sitting there, then sometimes trying to get the phone to go through the phone versus the communicator, because it's not quite as great to be at work and to have your phone ringing through your Star Trek communicator. He works for the government. They don't have a whole lot of amusement about this in the same way that the rest of us do. But yeah, totally works, makes noises. You can program it to do all sorts of things. And it is the coolest little device. And it's a Bluetooth device that's then hooking to your standard phone and your cell carrier, but totally works.
Cool. We'll have to revisit some of the cool merch inspired by the fiction we love. That might be a cool panel we could do some research on.
Oh,
I totally agree.
Because I've seen the thing. Why does a man need more than one lightsaber? Because they're cool.
Exactly.
So, all right. Well, we're going to pause for a moment while we shamelessly show for the man. And then when we come back, we will talk about his books that brought us here. 100 tons of steel and more firepower than the devil himself. They should be invincible, but armored combat is brutal and mistakes are fatal. Within, mech jockeys and treadheads take on the world one powerful blast at a time, risking it all for duty, fame, and glory. But deep down, they fear a savage contradiction. Armor can be your salvation. It can also be your worst nightmare. Which will hold true? Climb into the commander's hatch and find out. Buy a copy of this amazing anthology today. You deserve answers. All right. I needed to add my in space voice, but I'm still I'm experimenting with my ability to make my own commercials. But it is on mechs, so it was kind of on point. Mechs and tanks.
Well, if it helps any, is after hearing it from you, I want to go buy it now. So I think you do a good job.
I had a lot of fun with. So our co-host Nick made the art for the cover art. He's a comic book artist, but our anthologies, where possible, we go for a retro look. And so like that went for the old matte style art from like the 80s comics. And my short story in there I co-wrote with James Ward before he passed, and it was a lot of fun. So the cool part about it, I can't tell you because it'd be a spoiler, but it's got a lot of good stuff in there too. So some of it's ludicrous, some of it's serious, but it's all good fun. So all right, with that out of the way, let me show this book cover, and Janet can ask the question that starts it all.
Do you want the mom question already? Okay. So the mom question that I get to ask, because I have children who are readers, is we're looking at this, and what about age range do you think your series is appropriate for? Is this one I can give to the teenagers, or should it be for, my older boys who are well and truly, they've heard it all, so I don't worry about them anymore.
Actually, I kind of think about 16 plus. Definitely 16 plus. And the only reason I say that is because the books are violent, and I think when they get 16, 17, 18, you can enlist when you're 17. So I kind of feel like, that'd be a good starting age group. I definitely, my daughter wants to read it. And I even tell my daughter, I said, you'll read it when you're 16.
That is a good parent, I think, that knows what their kids can take. Because I run into that with my kid, where she has the physical ability to read and comprehend things that are at a low college level, but that doesn't mean emotionally she's ready for some of the subject matter. Even if it's not explicit, it's still sometimes just a lot. And you have to know your kid to know when are they ready for what. And I have to say, I am digging the font that you guys got for this. That is a awesome font. I mean, the tank also very, very cool, but you nailed a font that speaks both
I gotta
the
give credit
military and
to
sci-fi.
I gotta give credit to Jeffrey Haskell's wife, Rebecca Haskell. She's the one who did this cover for me and came up with the font. She's an amazing cover artist, and if any author comes to me and says, where can I go to get good cover art, I will always point them to Rebecca Haskell. I mean, don't waste your money on those contract sites and things like that. Those freelance sites. Don't waste your time. Go see Rebecca. And she's very reasonably priced. So yeah, that I wish I could get credit for it, but I can't. It's all Rebecca.
Oh, we know there's so many artists out there that make us look good as authors, but yeah, she really nailed it, because that is really, really great cover work.
Absolutely. So what made you go through the tread instead of, this is, aesthetically a question, not so much about the book, but I'm curious, why not like the lean into the sci-fi with like the hover tanks that some like Star Wars did?
Well, this goes back to what we said earlier, is I wanted to make my science fiction technology as realistic as possible. And my book is an alternate timeline event. So starting from 1996, when I graduated OCS, is where the story starts. So I said, okay, what would be our technology? And the thing about tread is there's a lot of advantages to tread. Hover tanks, people think they can travel over everything. No, they can't. Hover tanks really can't travel. Hover tanks they kick up more dust than anything. And and if the hover tank, for any reason that drive stops, you're becoming nothing but a giant glorified pillbox where, hey, if I break a track, it sucks, but we can break track and repair the track. So I wanted to make it real. And so that's why all my tanks are tracked or even wheeled. In book 3, the Sutherland tank is a wheeled tank for desert. But I felt that would give a realism to the science, science levels I was talking about for that period of time.
So we actually already have hover boats in the Navy. They put them on the Gator freighters, the boats that shuttle Marines, and repair is an issue. They spend as much time being maintained as they do being used. So there is something to be said for what you're talking about. But generally speaking, in sci-fi, it's the rule of cool as well. And so, it's a balancing act when it comes to the aesthetic. But with that out of the way, what would you say your elevator pitch, your sales pitch for this series would be?
This series appeals to both military and sci-fi fans, especially military sci-fi fans. This is a story where technology doesn't overshadow the storyline. The characters are very real. The book covers topics that most authors and even movies will not cover. It talks about what life is in the military. I cover the hurry up and wait phase. I cover the combat phase. I cover the aftermath of combat, which a lot of shows don't talk about. Of taking your first kill, doing your first bayonet kill, doing things like that. It talks about that, and I think that this is a story that tells a 360 view of what life is as a soldier. It talks about the loss of friends. I mean, I read science fictions. I just finished B.V. Larson's latest, Undying Mercenaries. And don't get me wrong, I think he writes a great series and he does do his homework. But when characters die, what they call permadeath, when they get a permadeath, it's like no one, they act like it's not a big deal. That they suck it up and move on. And in my book, I show the impact that every loss has and how it impacts all the characters, not just the main character. So,
I will say, at least in defense of Larson, when you die all the time because you're going to get recycled and rebirthed, you do get jaded. So I could see as a defense mechanism, like, what's the difference in Bob dying and Bob permanently dying if you're so used to seeing everyone die? It's kind of thing that won't hit till later. What Larson does do well is he analyzes like what it means to be human, because when this alien machine spits out another copy of your body with your memories, are you still you? Which Star Trek did with the teleporter. And so I do think, even Mill Sci-Fi can give you those deep questions. I don't know. I'm a fan of the Undying Mercenary series myself. I've read all of them. So I'm with you. But for yours, where did you get the premise? So we talked about how you started writing and why you picked the Cav as far as the subject matter. But where did the premise for Orbital Drop Armor Team, or ODAT, come from? Like, for the universe and the general story?
Okay. Well, I actually did some homework, and I said, okay, in this universe, you look at drop Marines, Space Marines, it's like majority of military science fiction is some kind of Marine. There's very few science fiction that have actually armor, regular army guys. Undying Mercenaries is one of the forefront ones of, non-Marine military. And and then I realized I happened to literally be sitting in my library, and I was looking, thinking this. I'm looking at my bookshelf, and I'm seeing David Drake's book, Hammer Slammers. And I'm like, and I did a search. It's like, no one has ever made since 30 years ago when Hammer Slam came out, no one has made a real science fiction talking about tanks and tanks that drop from space. And I'm like, inspiration is not imitation. So I took that inspiration and saying, okay, well, let's really talk about, if we were going to drop tanks, how it would really be done. And that kind of like how ODAT came into existence.
Okay. So is this a first person POV? Is it third person? Like, what are we going to see character wise in this story?
It is it's first person. So the books are set up as an after action briefing where, the main character is briefing to a group on, what he experienced. And in the book, that's some of the humor people like, where, I will stop the storyline to put in that, that briefing period of like, hey, you in the third row, unless you've been there, shut the hell up. So that's in the book. It's from the first person view of the world he sees it. And I chose that because in the real life, because it's based on my own experiences, there was a lot of things that where it's happening, I had no idea was going on. And I found out because, the Army dropped me into some really nasty place and it didn't match what the intel was telling me. So, so that's why I chose the first person view, and it being, instead of being in the present, I did it as a brief to capture the whole after action report feeling.
So is the main character an officer or enlisted? You were both, so it could go either way on this one.
It starts as I thought. I looked at my enlisted career and I said, my enlisted career is just too boring. No one would want to care. So I actually kicked it off in my as when I was an officer just graduating armor school at Fort Knox. So that's where it kicks off as an officer, and all the stuff I was stuck trying to learn and do as an officer.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that going either way in your experience, because one of the things you see a lot in Mill Sci-Fi, and I'm actually trying to get away from that some myself, is the tendency to make all of the officers morons and all of the NCOs near godlike. And so given that your experience was more officer than enlisted. Not to say the 4 years doesn't count, but for a lot of Mustang officers, they spent the majority of their career as enlisted, and it's the tail end when they become officers, not the other way around.
Yeah, I spent about 6 years as enlisted. So, you know, I made staff sergeant, and so I definitely can see, you know, there some of the Mustangs when I was in OCS, there were definitely people that were much older than me. So there's a lot of truth in what you're saying.
I think the trope of the infant or the officer as moron, the lieutenant as moron, it works because it's funny. But as we try to get more realistic in the post GWAT modern, you know, mil sci-fi, you're starting to see more nuance in the portrayal. And you know, get idiots that are sergeants too, and officers that actually have their stuff together. So with this series, are we talking? You know, obviously we've got troops that are dropping or tanks that are dropping from orbit. They're treaded, not hover. Are we talking plasma, or are we still using kinetic rounds?
Oh, it's a mix. There's a mix of munitions. There's railgun, kinetic railguns. The Sutherland, which is a plasma turret, a pulse particle, you know, basically it's based off the PPC off of BattleTech. Up on a tank.
Nice.
You know, so there's kinetic rounds still exist because especially the Terran military likes kinetic rounds because of the mere fact shields do not stop kinetic rounds. You know, shields are built to stop energy weapons. So it kind of, you know, where people laugh at, you know, the Terrans for still using slug-based weapons, you know, there's a niche for those weapons. But, you know, anything that's really big, like the big stuff, you know, it goes into like, you know, definitely rail guns and plasma cannons and antimatter torpedoes, things like that. That's on the bigger end.
So with the main character, you've got obviously Army tankers. Are we seeing other? Well, obviously, it's his point of view. Are we interacting with the sailors that are running the spaceships, or the Marines, or whatever other military forces they might be?
Yes, I definitely cover that. You know, with the ODAT is the space crunchies, the orbital drop Marines. The orbital drop Marines, my characters interact with the orbital drop Marines, and in the book, there's several joint operations that have both drop Marines and ODAT personnel working together. The character talks to the captain of the transport ship, so he interacts with the Navy. At the hangar, they're working with joint teams. So the book is very purple. It's very joint focused. To get people in this whole idea of, is that in today's military, it's you're not insulated. I mean, when you look at a lot of your World War II movies, even Vietnam movies, they kind of portray, this one alpha company, the infantry alpha company, and they don't deal or talk with anybody else on the battlefield. It's not very realistic. So I try to make sure that there's joint arms and joint combat operations that includes all factors, of the military. And so, yes, so the character is definitely in there. And like I said, the most famous character that my fans love is the drop Marine Gunny. She's everyone's favorite, which really kind of scratches my head because it's like I talk very little about her. But when I do mention her, I mentioned all the strengths I've known her for, and people just love her, which kind of somehow she overshadowed the main character among my fan base.
So, I will say that the focus on units insular from the others, that was accurate up until a point. I think Vietnam was probably the last point that was ever true, but we went modular post Vietnam with our military organization structure. So it sounds like you leaned into that with the way you did your combat operations here. What is the geopolitical state that this story is happening? And obviously there's a war because it's mil sci-fi. Can you tell us a little bit about the universe and what's, because obviously war is only as important as the cause people are fighting for. And if we're just, two mercenary companies fighting for credits, it's hard to get as invested as, oh, well, we're fighting space Nazis to free the, oppressed people everywhere, right? Like, so what are we looking at from geopolitical?
This is probably one of the most controversial topics I've had. And there is a anti-fan base that really criticizes me hard. This is that there is what I call the Galactic Empire of Core Worlds, and there's an emperor, and so we're an empire, and Earth was approached to become, because the empire is growing over time. The two main races, the Katau and the Serbians in the book, realize they don't have enough of a population to serve all the military needs. So they come to Earth or Terra. I use both Sol 3 and Terra. I don't like using the word Earth. I hate being called an Earthling. I'm a Terran. They come to us and indoctrinate us into the empire as their third race of military race of warriors. So our tithe or tax that we would pay to the empire is the ability to give bodies for the imperial forces to serve and help defend and maintain the empire. Where, I kind of look at, and when I thought about this, I say, well, would that really be practical if that really happened? And I realized we have 9.6 billion people on this planet. We could give 1.6 billion people, and we would, the planet itself wouldn't even know that many people were missing. So it was, so I went with that. And in the empire, there is nobility. There is a nobility factor, but there is an absolute loyalty to the emperor because of, the emperor, cares more about protecting his subjects than personal gain in this. And, and there's also strict rules that were set in place based on science, which certain more left-leaning groups vehemently don't like. In my second book, I was kind of forced into talking about, people a lot of talk to me about why I don't talk about certain things. And when I wrote the second book dealing about Afghanistan and things like that, there was a whole thing of dealing with the don't ask, don't tell policy. And so when I put that in the book, I kind of worded it that the empire does not allow or recognize in the imperial forces homosexuality or in the colonies. And I explained that saying, listen, when you're in a galactic empire, planets, the more planets you have that have successful colonies, the richer and more powerful you are. And the empire's view is that if you send couples who can't produce children, it doesn't make the colony better and stronger. And that's kind of the philosophy. And that I kind of did that to mirror the whole don't ask, don't tell type of philosophy. Because I kind of felt when I was doing book 2, that time of my military career, that was when it was the biggest controversy. And I felt I'd be doing a disservice by not having it reflected in my book for that timeline. And I also get a lot of haters saying, why an empire, why imperial, you am I enslaving the pot? It's like, let's be honest here. Democracy and a republic, because we're a republic, not a democracy, but republics and democracies are very inefficient governments. They don't enable the ability to work intergalactically. I mean, the Federation is a fallacy type of thing in Star Trek. It would never work. And I see that, and I was more reinforced with that that when I went into the Gulf War, the second one, when you have armchair congressmen and senators, demanding that before a general does something, they get their permission first. That whole armchair going, and it's like, and I said, I look at it, yeah. I cannot have an intergalactic government that was done that way. You got to have an emperor. The emperor has people, and he's like, listen, your job is to protect this sector, this arm, this part of the Orion arm. Make it happen. And the galactic law, the galactic rules, the rules of nobility. You're expected to play in these games, and that way, these military forces can rapidly deploy, do what they need to do, and not have to worry about politics. And I will admit, I have gotten a lot of criticism from some fan groups, especially on Goodreads. On Amazon, I'm not so much, but on Goodreads, I get a lot of hate because I used an empire versus a federation. Now, and people have accused me of being a dictatorial person. I'm in favor of dictatorship. And it's like, no, I'm not. I mean, I'm very pro-democracy. I believe in the republic as a real world person. It's just when you're doing a military science fiction, you want to link, the thing about military science fiction versus science fiction and fantasy is that the books are based on some form of reality, something that makes it work. And I could not find a way to legitimately say a representative government could govern an intergalactic scale. It just can't happen. So that's
something, quantum entanglement, something, instant communication.
Yeah. And that's, I don't see what I do is I deal with communications via, basically leapfrogging, hopfrogging. It's basically, there's relay satellites that relay comms, but everything moves at the speed of light. I know that people say, oh, you could use tachyon communications and quantum entanglement, but those are still very much theories. And I'm not a physicist enough to write about those type of technologies and make it make any sense outside of me bringing the IBM magic pixie to put the pixie ducks to make it work. So
ultimately, like, I get that people, I've seen some of the Goodreads comments that they get stupid. Well, first off, as readers, we have to accept that just because an author writes a thing, that doesn't mean they believe a thing. It just means it was a good part for the story. And two, like, as long as you're as long as you're internally consistent, I don't know. I've seen a lot, and maybe it's because I read outside of just mill sci-fi. Americans in general are way more obsessed with like the royals and all of things monarchical than even the Brits are, and they live under it. So to me, I'm shocked that anybody cares, to be honest, especially with the popularity of Warhammer with the Eternal Emperor. So in this universe with this empire, are there aliens?
Oh, yes, there is.
You stole my question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's, the main races here. I'll just cover. There's a lot of races in the book, and in my new series, I'm even introducing more races. But the big ones is the Serbians. Serbians are life forms that evolved from canine versus us that came from simian. So. And I always have people ask me, well, are they like walking? No, they're not a walking dog. They don't look like a dog that you have today that walks on 2 feet with opposable thumbs. They look like us, but they have certain features that make them, they have canine. So, it's sort of like, and then the Katau is the same thing, but from a feline. So like they would look very human. They don't have tails, but they do have the cat eyes. Pupil versus the round pupil. Then there's my preference is I never intended this to happen, but my mechanical, technically inclined race, the Volp, are evolved from foxes, and that particular alien race actually has a fox tail and fox ears and on human bodies, and that has become probably the most favorite race among my fan group. I don't know why. I just don't.
Because they're cool.
And then there's I have the lawyers are space transpanders. So what I mean by that? But they're just anthropomorphic raccoons. They're raccoons, space raccoons. No, they don't look like Rocky from.
Oh man,
No, they don't
Guardians
look
of the
like.
Galaxy.
Yes, they don't look like. But they're an analog. They're a raccoon analog, and when the Terrans meet them, we call them space trash pandas. And then there's the newer races I'm introducing is the Norsicans, which the Norsican Imperium is a counter government to the Empire of the Core Worlds. So I got them. I have a, just to, flip the switch on some readers. I have the a totally artificial intelligence race that pretty much is anti-organic, called the Cybrids. So I got them as another empire. So there are plenty of aliens, and that's why I always kind of scratch my head when people say it's my book doesn't have science. It's science fiction without the science, and I'm like, I have to scratch my head on that. I'm like, I have aliens, I have tanks, I have but that's pretty much the ballpark of the aliens. And there's a lot more, and I'm always introducing more. On my YouTube page, Imperial Information Network, I'm constantly posting documentaries of the various races that are on my in my book series, so people can understand and where they are. I have posted right now. I have documentaries on the Katal, the Serbians, the Fenrir of Fenris, the Volp, already up, and I'm working on a few others. My next documentary is going to be on the Shard, which is an alien race I introduced in book 3. So, if you like aliens, there's plenty of aliens. Captain Kirk would love this book.
Oh, so they're sexy aliens.
I can neither confirm nor deny that.
There we go. So looking at it, what are so one of the things that we ask for that on behalf of JR and others who like to read with their ears, do you have audio coming, or will it stay mostly in ebook and paperback, or what formats can we look forward to?
There is an audiobook in production. I am using Hoyt Audio Productions. They're a group out of Florida, veteran owned, and I actually served with Alan Hoyt, who's the guy who's the voice actor, and and he's an amazing piece of talent, because not only is he a Marine, he's a Marine who's a member of SAG. He's been on TV. He's been on TV shows like Lost.
Oh, wow.
And everything, and so he's voicing my ODAT series. So there is an audiobook coming, but I keep telling my fans, it's a small studio, so it's not like Atheon or the other audiobook company where they have hundreds of people. He's a small shop, so he is producing it. It is coming. I know everyone's very eager to get the audiobook, but it's in the works. And as soon as the audiobook for book 1 is complete, we're going right into audiobook 2. So they'll start rolling out.
Sweet. All right. Well, then last question for me, and then we'll see if JR has anything to round us up with. What can you tell us without giving away too many spoilers? You told us, we have alien races. We've been pulled into the Galactic Empire. So what is the conflict base? Do we have, is there somebody the Galactic Empire is actively at war with? Or is this just they go wherever they need to, and it's a series of encounters that aren't necessarily one force versus another force in a grand overarching way?
Well, interesting question. And the way this book is based mirroring on what we are today. Book 1 is based on K4S4. So it's based upon those conflicts. Book 2 is about Afghanistan, and book 3 is about Iraq. So this isn't like Star Wars where you have 9 books and the enemy is always the Empire, or the Sith. In the Galactic Empire, there's various fractions, there's uprisings, there's so there is circuit and pockets of conflict, and anything that threatens the stability of the empire, they're going to deploy either ODATs or drop Marines to seize it. And that, when I wrote book 3, which is based on the Gulf War, Iraq, OIF, for us, it was oil. That was a big thing. And so in my 3rd book, it's the planet the Trade Federation started playing games with the empire and cutting off the rare materials they need to make FTL drives. So, and the empire sent, forces in to basically kick the ass out of the Trade Federation, saying, no, you don't play games like that, the empire. So, and I did it that way because I feel that reflects more of the life we have, that we majority of the living. I mean, we haven't had a declared war since 1991 and 2001. So we've, and what has happened since the last time we declared war? Well, we bombed, Obama bombed Libya. Trump's been bombing Iran. We've had all these conflicts, off the Caribbean coast and the Suez Canal area. So I wanted my series to reflect that there isn't just one big bad guy. I mean, if Ronald Reagan never brought down the Soviet Union, the Iron Curtain, the Soviet Union, then I probably would have written the book as us versus an opposing force. But since, don't get me wrong, Russia is still a very powerful country, but the Russia that exists today is not the same one we grew up with, where when we were in high school, we actually had thermonuclear missile drills in schools.
It's true.
So real quick, for people that don't know, when you said K4, I'm assuming you mean the Kosovo actions, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then book 3 is Afghanistan. So what is book 3?
Book 3 is OIF. Afghanistan is book 2.
Okay. So I know sometimes there's a tendency we use acronyms and the rest of the world's like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. So I wanted to clear that up. Okay, so we got audiobook coming. Is this series done at the 3-book mark? Because currently there's 3 books out and you're writing a new series that's in the same world, or is this a completed series?
There will be a book 4. However, my fan base, as I have been writing this and expanding the universe, fans have been asking me about other aspects of my universe. So I'm going to take a short break from ODAT. I'm going to write a same universe, same world, same character, not say same character, but same races. I'm doing a book called Imperial Privateer, which the privateers are going to explore a lot of the law enforcement, pirate control, drug running control. And it's going to cover a lot of those aspects that a lot of fan base have asked me. It's like, well, how does this empire maintain law? Is there like some galactic space, are there galaxy rangers or something? And so that's my answer to that. And I'm probably going to do 3 books in Imperial Privateer. Then I'll switch back and do a book for ODAT. And I think, many authors and publishing firms, are very against me doing this. They're like, oh, spinoffs never sell. And I'm like, have you not seen the Star Trek franchise? So I feel that I'm offering my fan base a bigger universe, more possibilities. I kind of look at it like the Wing Commander series. When you look at the Wing Commander games 1 through 5, well, there just isn't 1 through 5. They actually have a privateer series. They have a trader series. So I'm kind of making my books in that same light of how Wing Commander was made, where you got a main storyline, but you have various story arcs. I know that was kind of a long-winded long-winded answer to your question, but I hope I answered it right.
Yeah, I think we got it.
Nope. All right. So as we wrap this up, because we did promise our listeners that we would try to keep it to the under an hour and a half going forward. This is the part, dear listener, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right book. So do your part. It really does matter. With that out of the way, if people wanted to track you down on the wild interwebs, where might they do that? And as usual, all of the links will be in the show notes.
Well, I am most active on my fan group in Facebook called Imperial Command. I interact with my my fan base, and I do take suggestions from my book from my fan base. For example, in books, starting with book 2, going to book 3, and future books, I have 2 characters known as the twins, based on real fans who are actual twins. So I do that. Another platform I'm very active on is my YouTube page for the Imperial Information Network. I am always posting new videos about my universe, whether it's a music video or a documentary or a book trailer. You'll find me there. Then, you will see me on Instagram under Geister, the author. I'm there, but very rarely. I seem to be more active in the first 2, but I do post trailers and stuff on Instagram. So those are the most social ones I'm really most active on. But after discussing with you pre-show, as I'm gonna get a Rumble account and start being on Rumble.
Okay. Yeah, there's a good reading audience over there on Rumble and on BitChute. So yeah, it's definitely worth exploring. All right. So you can find us, dear listener, on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast, where we link to all the things: the BitChute, the Rumble, the YouTube, the TikTok, the Twitters. We've got our Spotify, our Discord, our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. You can email us at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com for professional purposes only, people. Save the shenanigans from Stab over there on the Instagram, the Twitter, and the email. We do not have it links yet in our link tree, but we have officially started a Blasters and Blades Substack where I will link to, much like we do in our Discord, all of the episodes as they come out with the starting at season 6, because there aren't that many of them. I'm going to go backwards and start uploading all of them as posts where we, set up the intro. You can click the links for all the places it goes live. And then in addition to that, the newsletter feature that Substack offers will only be for people signing up that want to potentially find out when we have open calls for panels and such. If you wanted to volunteer as tribute to come on and join our panels. And so that will be the only time the newsletter side of it gets emailed. But that is going to be coming up soon. Once I start populating it with content, it will go into the link tree and we'll start sharing that around as well. You could support the show in addition to what you can do on Substack, where you can join a paid tier to support a group. You can support us over at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. You will drink that coffee brand coffee until they get high on their own supply. If you want some of that coffee brand coffee, the link is in the show notes. The discount code is podcast grunts. You get 10% off. We get a little bit of a kickback. It's a win-win, people. And with that, I would also remind you that our Discord is now pretty hopping with listeners and viewers as well, including a very active meme channel that Jana had to mute because apparently we were waking her up at night or something. I don't know what that's about. Sleep? Who does that?
Me, I do that.
What's sleep? I know not this term.
And with that,
I sleep.
I would like to thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. With that, I'm going to hit the end button. Thank you for coming on, Alexander.
Hey, definitely keep in mind for some panels, especially if we're going to talk about, science that has become real. I would love to be on that panel.
I will add that as well.